Marie, you will stay away from that prince. You are too young to give your heart to a man. Princes do not belong in the lives of simple village girls. You will stop seeing him. Do you understand me?
Father, I cannot. I love him.
What do you know about love?
Well, what brings a worried father into my forest tonight?
My daughter has fallen in love with a prince, and I want it to end.
Love can be a dangerous thing.
I don't want them to marry. Make the prince disappear. Make him leave her alone.
Are you certain? Once magic is set free, it cannot always be undone.
Yes, do it.
Long before cities filled the land, before roads cut through forests and fields, there lived a girl whose beauty seemed to belong more to nature than to the world of men. Her name was Marie. She lived in a small, wooden house with her mother and father at the edge of a quiet forest. Just beside their home flowed a gentle bubbling brook, its waters always singing as they ran over smooth stones. The villagers often said the brook itself must have loved Marie, because every morning she came to its banks, and the water sparkled brighter when she arrived. Marie was known across the land, not only for the soft curl of her midnight black hair, or the brightness of her eyes that sparkled like sunlight dancing on water, but for the kindness in her heart. When she laughed, the sound floated through the forest like music. Birds would pause on branches. Butterflies drifted closer, and every traveler who passed through the village carried the same story. To the next town, there is a girl near the forest brook, whose beauty could soften even the hardest heart. Those whispers eventually reached the royal palace, and they reached the ears of a young prince. The prince had grown up surrounded by gold, marble halls, and servants who bowed whenever he passed. But despite all that luxury, he was lonely. Stories of Marie's beauty stirred something inside him, not just curiosity, but a strange warmth he could not explain. One warm afternoon, unable to resist the rumors any longer, the prince rode his horse quietly through the forest toward the village. He did not wear royal robes that day. Instead, he dressed simply, like an ordinary traveler. When he arrived near the brook, he heard laughter drifting through the trees. He stepped closer, and there she was. Marie stood barefoot in the shallow water, washing clothes against the smooth stones of the stream. The sunlight touched her curls like tiny threads of gold. The prince stopped breathing. For a moment, he simply watched, not because of her beauty alone, but because of the way she moved with such ease, as if she belonged to the forest itself. Marie suddenly turned and noticed the stranger standing near the trees. Their eyes met, and the prince felt his heart stumble. Marie smiled gently. "Good afternoon," she said kindly. "You look like someone who has traveled far." The prince stepped forward, suddenly shy. "I may have," he admitted softly. That was the first moment their lives began to change forever. After that day, the prince returned again, and again, and again. Soon it became a quiet routine. Every afternoon he would ride through the forest and meet Marie beside the bubbling brook. They talked for hours. They spoke of dreams, of distant lands, of music, of the stars that filled the night sky. Sometimes they simply sat side by side on the grassy bank, letting the cool water brush their feet. The prince had never known peace like this before. In Marie's presence, he forgot he was royalty. And Marie, for the first time, felt the mysterious warmth of love blooming quietly inside her heart. One evening, they lay on the soft grass beside the stream, watching the sky. Thousands of stars shimmered above them. "Do you ever wish," the prince said quietly, "that time could stop?" Marie turned to him. "For moments like this?" she asked. The prince nodded. Marie smiled softly. "I think moments like this are meant to pass," she said, "because they make the next one even more precious." The prince looked at her as if she were the brightest star in the sky. And slowly, gently, they fell in love. But not everyone was happy. Marie's father had begun to notice how often the young stranger visited. At first, he said nothing. He watched. He listened. And slowly, worry grew inside his heart. One morning, as the sun rose above the trees, he called Marie to him. She stood before him, her hands still damp from the brook. Her father spoke sternly. "You spend far too much time with that young man." Marie hesitated. "He is kind," she replied softly. Her father shook his head. "You are too young to be wandering about with a man," he said firmly. "You must stop seeing him at once." The words struck Marie like cold wind. She looked up at him with sadness in her eyes. "I cannot," she whispered. Her father frowned. "I am in love," she said bravely. "And I will not stop seeing him." The room fell silent. Her father's face hardened. He said nothing more. But something dark had already begun forming in his mind. Beyond the creek, deeper in the forest, stood a crooked little hut. Few villagers dared walk near it, because inside lived a witch. Marie's father knew this. And the next morning, before sunrise, he walked alone into the forest. Branches snapped beneath his boots as he approached the hut. When he knocked on the crooked wooden door, it slowly creaked open. The witch stood inside. Her thin lips curled into a strange smile. "Well," she rasped, "what brings a worried father into my woods?" Marie's father spoke quickly. "My daughter has fallen for a prince," he said bitterly. "She is too young, too foolish. I want him gone." The witch's yellow eyes narrowed. "Gone?" she asked slowly. "Yes," the father snapped. "I do not want them to marry." The witch stirred a dark bubbling potion in a pot beside her. "Are you certain," she asked quietly, "that this is what you desire?" The father did not hesitate. "Yes." The witch smiled. "Then it shall be done." Marie's father left the hut satisfied. But the forest itself seemed to whisper warnings as he walked home. That evening, Marie and the prince once again sat beside the stream. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of gold and crimson. They did not see the witch approaching through the trees. She held a crooked wand in her hand, dripping with glowing liquid from the potion she had brewed. She pointed it toward the prince and whispered a terrible spell. Her voice rose like a cold wind. As the old man does desire, you in the stream to splash and flop. Oh, change thee into orange fire, and I will make you swim non-stop. A thick magical mist filled the air. Marie's eyes suddenly grew heavy. She collapsed gently into the grass, falling into a deep, enchanted sleep. The prince tried to stand, but his body began to shimmer with strange light. His arms twisted. His legs vanished. His skin turned bright, glowing orange. In just seconds, he was no longer a man. He had become a fish, a brilliant orange fish. With a desperate leap, the enchanted prince flopped into the brook. Splash! The rushing current caught him immediately and carried him far, far away. Moments later, Marie slowly opened her eyes. The mist had vanished. The forest was quiet again. She looked around in confusion. The prince was gone. "Hello?" she called softly. No answers, only the sound of water flowing over stones. Marie searched the riverbank. She ran along the stream calling his name. But he had disappeared. Heartbroken, she slowly walked back home. Her father greeted her with an unusually cheerful smile. But Marie did not notice. Her heart had already begun to break. That night, Marie cried quietly beside her window. But far away, beneath the flowing waters of the brook, a bright orange fish swam desperately against the current, watching, waiting, hoping, because even under a curse, the prince still remembered the girl he loved, and he was trying to find his way back to her. The days that followed were heavy with silence. Marie no longer laughed the way she once had. The cheerful girl who used to sing beside the stream now moved through the house like a shadow. Her mother noticed it first, the quiet sadness in her daughter's eyes. But Marie never explained what troubled her. Every morning she returned to the brook. She would sit on the smooth stones beside the flowing water and stare at the place where she and the prince had once talked for hours. Sometimes she whispered his name softly to the wind. Sometimes she simply watched the water move past her feet. Her father watched all of this from a distance. At first, he believed the sadness would pass. He told himself that young love was foolish and fragile, something that faded quickly. But it did not fade. If anything, Marie's sorrow seemed to grow deeper with each passing day. The bright warmth that once filled her heart had turned into a quiet ache. Still, she returned to the brook every day, always hoping, always waiting. One afternoon, the sky was clear and the sun rested gently over the trees. Marie sat by the stream, hugging her knees, staring into the water. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, almost without realizing it, she began to sing. Her voice was soft at first, barely louder than the breeze. But the melody carried across the water. A strange and ancient song. Kaliva va, kaliva tseo. Waco, mother says yes. Waco, father says no. Kaliva va, kaliva tseo. The sound drifted along the brook like a whisper. And sudden, the water moved. At first it was only a ripple. Then another. Marie leaned forward slightly. The ripples grew larger, spreading across the surface of the stream as if something beneath. The water had heard her voice. Then, slowly, the brook parted. Out of the shimmering water emerged a brilliant orange fish. It glowed so brightly in the sunlight that it almost looked like fire beneath the surface. Marie gasped softly. The fish swam closer to the edge of the stream. Its scales shimmered in the light, reflecting gold and amber. For a moment, it almost looked as if the fish wore a tiny crown made of sunlight. Marie felt something strange in her chest. Something familiar. Something comforting. She smiled gently. And, without understanding why, she returned the next day. The following afternoon, Marie once again sat beside the brook and sang her song. Again the water stirred. Again the brilliant orange fish appeared, but this time in its mouth. It swam close to the bank and dropped a small bright blue stone onto the grass beside. Marie. She picked it up carefully. The stone sparkled in the sunlight like a tiny jewel. Marie laughed softly for the first time in many days. "Is this for me?" she asked gently. The fish swam in a small circle, splashing happily. From that day forward, the strange friendship continued. Every afternoon, Marie came to the stream. And every afternoon the fish appeared. Sometimes it brought smooth, colourful stones from the riverbed. Sometimes it carried long, musical reeds that whistled beautifully when the wind passed through them. Other times it nudged floating berries toward the shore. Marie began to look forward to these small gifts. And slowly, very slowly, the sadness inside her heart began to soften. But someone else had begun watching. Marie's father noticed the change. Instead of returning from the brook with tears in her eyes, she now came home with quiet smiles. Curious and suspicious, he followed her one afternoon. Hidden behind the trees, he watched his daughter approach the stream. She sat on the bank and began to sing her strange song once more. Kaliva va, kaliva tseo. Waco, mother says yes. Waco, father says no. The water stirred. The father's eyes widened. From the depths of the brook appeared the same bright orange fish. It swam happily toward Marie, splashing gently in the sunlight. The father's face twisted with anger. He did not understand what he was seeing. But he knew one thing. Whatever comfort his daughter had found, he wanted it gone. He returned home silently. But the next day, he came back to the brook. This time, he carried a spear. Marie walked to the stream as she always did. She knelt near the water's edge and began her song. The father hid behind a tree, gripping the spear tightly. The fish appeared again. Its scales shone brightly as it swam toward the girl. Marie smiled and leaned closer to the water. At that moment, the father rushed forward through the air. Splash! The weapon struck the fish. The water exploded with movement. The orange fish struggled desperately. but the spear had pierced it. Marie screamed. Her father lifted the fish from the water. Still flopping, still shining. He turned and walked away. Marie collapsed beside the brook, shaking with grief. But the worst had not yet come. When they arrived home, Marie's father dropped the fish onto the kitchen table. "Cook it," he ordered. Marie stared at the fish in horror. Its bright orange scales still shimmered faintly. Tears streamed down her face. But her father's voice grew colder. "Cook's a fish." Her hands trembled as she prepared the fire. With a broken heart, Marie cooked the fish. Then her father gave another command. "Serve the fish." Marie slowly placed the meal before him. Her father sat down at the table. Then he gave his final cruel order. "Sit there and watch." Marie sat quietly as her father began to eat. He ate greedily, piece after piece, bite after bite. He kept eating, and eating, and eating. Soon his belly grew large, larger than it should have been. Still he continued, until suddenly, "Pop!" A loud, terrible sound filled the room. Marie gasped. Her father's stomach split open, and from inside, thousands of tiny orange fish burst out. They flopped across the floor, splashing and wriggling wildly. Marie ran to the door and threw it open. The tiny fish rushed toward the river, leaping and splashing back into the water. Within a second, were gone. All except Marie. Marie fell to her knees outside the house. The grief inside her was too much to hold. She began to cry. Not softly, not quietly, but with deep aching roar. Her tears fell onto the ground. And something strange began to happen. The tears did not disappear into the soil. Instead, they gathered, forming a small pool beneath her. The pool grew larger and larger until the water surrounded her feet, then her knees, then her waist. Marie was standing in a pond formed entirely from her tears. The water shimmered softly in the sunlight, and then the surface rippled. Marie froze. From beneath the water, a figure slowly rose. A familiar face emerged from the pond. It was the prince. No longer a fish. No longer cursed. He stood before her once again in his human form. Marie's heart leapt with joy. "My love," the prince said softly. His voice was warm and gentle. "The magic that bound me to the water has finally broken." He reached for her hands. "Come with me," he whispered. "Come beneath the water, and we will never be separated again." Marie did not hesitate. She stepped forward. Together they slipped beneath the shining surface of the pond, and the water closed quietly above them. Moments later, Marie's mother ran outside, searching for her daughter. "Marie," she called, but there was no answer. She followed the path to the creek, and there, where Marie had once stood, she found only a small sparkling pond. Around its edges lay countless brilliant orange scales, glowing softly in the sunlight. The brook flowed peacefully beside it, and deep beneath the water, Marie and her prince lived together for many, many suns and moons. Far away from fear, far away from cruelty, forever in the quiet kingdom beneath the water.